The Chicago Bears had a lot riding on their 2020 draft class in a win-now season. Despite having limited draft capital to work with, Ryan Pace and his team of scouts went to work and found key contributors on a team that, while admittedly not accomplished in the prettiest manner, made the playoffs in a rocky year across the NFL and in sports in general. For this episode of The Film Room, I break down the rookie years from the major contributors in this past year's draft class, going over their highs and lows, while giving some insight into what these players can be in the years to come. We'll start with Kmet, who I've covered in a previous video. It was an interesting year for Kmet, as while he started off slow with limited playing time in the beginning, he flashed more and more as the season progressed, and we saw his opportunities increase. For perspective, in the Bears' first 9 games of the season, Kmet didn't have a single game where he played at least 50% of the snaps, posting receiving numbers of 6 receptions for 79 yards and 1 touchdown during that time span. In the final 7 regular season games of the season, Kmet played at least 70% of the snaps in each, posting a stat line of 22 receptions for 164 yards and 1 touchdown. When looking at the positives in Kmet's game, I was impressed with his blocking considering the context that this was a 21-year-old rookie. Kmet still has a long way to go before I'd consider him a plus in this category, but he had his fair share of nice reps run blocking and proved to be solid as an extra blocker in pass protection as well. Maybe his biggest strength as a player, however, was showcased with his ability to create yards after the catch in the passing game. According to Pro Football Reference, Kmet averaged 4.9 yards after the catch in 2020, 13th amongst all tight ends. While he isn't the shiftiest or quickest to accelerate, Kmet has solid build-up speed, and when you combine that with his 260-pound frame and physical play style, that leads to many plays where he drags smaller defenders along for the ride as he picks up extra yards. Many of his best plays in that regard came as a result of the Bears calling a lot of bootleg action late in the year, where he would get the ball in the flat with space to maneuver and get vertical. Probably my favorite play of his during the season came in Week 14 against the Houston Texans. On a 2nd and 8, the Bears run a variation of their bootleg concept that was heavily utilized down the stretch. In this play, Kmet comes from across the formation after the snap and is the dump-off option if nothing is open down the field or if there's quick pressure on Trubisky. With the Texans quickly getting after the quarterback, Trubisky makes a nice throw to get Kmet the ball with room to run. Kmet first sheds the chasing linebacker almost like he's nothing, and then proceeds to bowl over multiple defenders who can't even get him to the ground. This went for an easy first down and should be a staple of his game moving forward. This of course leads us to the negatives of Kmet's game, mainly centering around his sometimes worrisome ball security. While it is nice that Kmet is tough and physical after the catch, this can be a detriment if he consistently puts the ball on the ground. Probably the most notable example came in Week 17 versus Green Bay. The Bears are running the same bootleg concept where Kmet leaks to the flat. During his effort to get extra yards after the catch, he's way too loose with the ball here as multiple Packers swarm to the play, and this leads to a costly turnover. Overall, there was a lot to like with Kmet's rookie year, and his overall stat line bodes well for his development going forward when compared to other highly drafted tight ends in their rookie seasons. Moving on to the Bears' second round selection, Jaylon Johnson impressed as a player that started from day one and didn't look back. While he didn't come out of 2020 with an interception, Johnson was disruptive on the boundary for the Bears defense, leading all rookie cornerbacks in forced incompletions with 14 according to Pro Football Focus, and he also finished the year 6th amongst all cornerbacks in passes defended with 15. As a bigger corner with polished technique coming out of Utah, Johnson is at his best when he can press wide receivers at the line of scrimmage and use his size and length to attack downhill on underneath routes. A good example of Johnson's ability to impress comes in this play against the Colts in Week 4. The Colts are running a clear-out concept with a slant underneath to target Johnson on this play. Johnson does a good job of getting his hands on Colts wide receiver Zach Pascal and stays engaged throughout the rest of the rep as the route is being run within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. This leads to an easy pass breakup on 3rd down. This play against Carolina is a good showcase of Johnson's instincts when working downhill and off coverage to play the ball. On 3rd and long, with the Panthers up against their own goal line, the Bears are running a cover 4 match coverage. We see Johnson starting off in off coverage before the snap about 10 yards off the line of scrimmage, and his responsibility on this play is to essentially match up against the first receiver that enters his zone. The Panthers are working a curl concept to his side of the field, hoping to expose a soft spot in the zone to pick up additional yardage so that they aren't punting in their own end zone. Johnson, however, diagnoses and times this play perfectly, breaking on the receiver right as he makes his curl and uses his length to reach around him to make a play on the ball. The Bears get a fortunate bounce from the football gods, and we have ourselves an early interception to give the Bears momentum early in this game. While there was a lot of good with Johnson in 2020, he did have his fair share of struggles as teams exposed holes in his game as the season progressed. For perspective, in his first 9 games, Johnson was mostly very impressive, allowing a 48% completion percentage on 52 targets for 8.04 yards per target and 2 touchdowns, netting an imposing passer rating of 88.46. Things sort of fell off the rails, however, during his 4 final starts of the year as Johnson hit the typical rookie wall. In those 4 starts, Johnson allowed a 73% completion percentage on 26 targets for 10.62 yards per target and 3 touchdowns, netting a 145.67 passer rating. So what exactly did teams expose to cause that drastic change in production? For starters, while Johnson is very good with his press at the line of scrimmage, his lack of long speed and quickness can get exposed down the field when playing off coverage. While Johnson didn't give up a ton of completions as a rookie and was productive making plays on the ball, the completions he did give up were often deep down the field for big plays. This would explain why his yards per target was relatively high for the season at 8.9 yards per target, despite a low 56% completion percentage allowed. This play against the Lions is a good example as Johnson gives up a touchdown late in Week 13 on an out-and-up move. The Bears are once again in cover 4 match, and based on Johnson's alignment, he's expecting to have inside help from Deshaun Gibson in the middle of the field. The problem here, however, is that Gibson is playing the sticks on this play, which puts Johnson in a bit of a bind. Before he realizes what has happened, Marvin Jones is already by Johnson, and his reaction time and recovery speed is too slow to get to Jones in time to prevent the touchdown. With all that said, cornerback has historically been one of the toughest positions in the NFL in terms of rookies translating early on in their careers. While he certainly had his fair share of struggles late during the rookie season, Johnson flashed the upside of a future number 1 cornerback and should form a formidable duo with Kyle Fuller in 2021 when both are healthy. While Kmet and Johnson had good years, arguably the most impressive of the bunch was 5th rounder Darnell Mooney. The Bears traded up for the former Tulane wide receiver, and it's fair to say that the decision to make that aggressive move has paid massive dividends. In quite possibly the most loaded wide receiver class in recent NFL history, Mooney was one of the most productive rookie wide receivers in the NFL, boasting a stat line of 61 receptions for 631 yards and 4 touchdowns. While you don't get that type of production being a one-trick pony, the most important attribute that Mooney added to the Bears' offense was his speed and explosiveness. The first part that we'll look at for this is how Mooney impacts the game as a deep threat. Because of the fear of his speed, defenses are forced to play off coverage against him at pretty much all times. This opens up a variety of different routes for Mooney, whether it be quick outs, slants, or curls, and basically creates situations where the Bears can get free yards on quick passes when going his direction. Even with that cushion though, Mooney still found ways to get behind defenses all season, which led to some of the Bears' most explosive plays in 2020. This play against the Saints is a very good showcase of Mooney's vertical ability. The Bears are running a sort of dagger crossing concept with Allen Robinson here, with 2 vertical routes to stretch the field. The Saints are in a cover 1 robber match concept where the cornerback covering Allen Robinson is going to pass off any crossing route to the high safety while both cornerbacks on the opposite side are in man coverage essentially. Anthony Miller is running his vertical across the formation. meant to open up space for Mooney, who was running a deep, skinny post. Upon the snap, Mooney does a great job of using his quickness at the line of scrimmage to get inside leverage on the cornerback before stacking him vertically. At this point, he's already won the rep, and it's just a matter of whether the quarterback can get him the ball or not. Nick Foles does a nice job here of diagnosing the coverage and throwing a beautiful deep ball to Mooney for a 50-yard gain, which eventually sparked a touchdown drive. What's frustrating about this play, however, is that Mooney should have had more big receptions just like this if it weren't for lackluster quarterback play throughout the year. There were multiple instances where Mooney got open deep, but either due to a missed read or bad ball, the Bears couldn't capitalize on it. On this play against Tampa Bay in Week 5, for instance, Mooney is running a deep corner route off of play action for a nice deep shot concept. Mooney does a nice job here of quickly eating up cushion while selling the inside route before a crisp cut leaves the cornerback in the dust. Unfortunately, pressure allowed by the offensive line forces a bad throw from Foles, and instead of an easy walk-in touchdown, the Bears had to punt on this possession. There were other ways that Mooney affected the game with his speed, however, as we saw the Bears get much more creative on how to utilize him on underneath routes in the passing game. More specifically, the Bears use a lot of play-action concepts out of bunch formations where Mooney was either the man in motion before the snap or would come across the formation after the snap to the flat. Many of these plays led to Mooney getting the ball wide open with plenty of yards of real estate, and his speed allowed him to take advantage by quickly accelerating to get a good amount of yards after the catch. When looking at Mooney going forward, I expect him to be a foundational part of the Bears' offense in the years to come. For a team that needed more juice from their playmakers on offense, the Bears have to feel good about their young speedster's development. Not to be completely outdone, the other 5th-round picks for the Bears, Kindle Vildor and Travis Gibson, also saw some playing time this season, with the vast majority coming late in the year. Starting with Vildor, there wasn't much expected from him as a raw player out of Georgia Southern. However, he was asked to play critical snaps in the last few weeks of the season in replacing Jaylon Johnson on the outside. Expected to be purely a slot cornerback when initially drafted, Vildor showed nice versatility getting to use his length and athleticism on the boundary. While the coverage stats weren't outstanding this season, he did make a few nice plays here and there that gave us a glimpse of his potential. This is a nice play in Week 17 against Green Bay, where Vildor is playing the underneath flat and cover 2 zone. Vildor does a nice job of disguising his intentions and anticipating where Rodgers will go with the ball, fooling Rodgers into throwing the curl route. While Vildor would drop an easy interception here, this is a promising development in terms of showcasing his zone instincts. As for Gibson, the Tulsa product was always expected to be a bit of a project, but there were some nice flashes in the limited opportunities that the toolsy edge rusher got in 2020. According to my own personal tracking, Gibson had 4 pressures on only 33 pass rush reps this season, a very good rate despite the small sample size. My favorite rush by Gibson this season came against Houston, where Gibson is matched up against Laramie Tunsil, one of the best left tackles in all of football. Gibson does a good job of using his hands and leverage to quickly dislodge Tunsil, which creates a quick pressure on Deshaun Watson and forces him to scramble out of the pocket. All in all, even though the Bears were without a first-round pick in 2020 and lacked significant draft capital in general, Ryan Pace and his front office did a fantastic job of using what resources they did have to put together a talented draft class. With Kmet, Johnson, and Mooney, the Bears have 3 starters going forward that they can hopefully build around as part of this team's core. While we only saw flashes from them this past season, the Bears have to be encouraged with what they saw out of Gibson and Vildor as 5th-round projects with a good amount of physical upside as well. With another key offseason looming in the months ahead, there's a ton of uncertainty at Hal's Hall with the direction that the Bears will take in 2021. Regardless, this regime can stay encouraged with this past year's draft class, knowing that it might just be their best yet.